Hi there, friends. This is Reverend Dr. Jesse Tanner. I'm the senior pastor here at the United Church of Byron, and this is the third episode of my vlog that I'm calling Journey with Jesse, about engaging different questions and concerns that I'm wrestling with and inviting you into that conversation here in this 21st century new age of spirituality and faith. I've been away for a couple of weeks, busyness as usual, but now I'm back and I'm ready to talk about Halloween and Christian spirituality. I used to teach English as a second language. I used to tutor, actually, English as a second language students from countries like Korea, Vietnam, China, Taiwan, places like that, and as well as Southeast Asia. And many of these students knew about Christmas and Easter and things like that, but they would inevitably ask me, what is up with Halloween? And I can't blame them. How do you describe Halloween to people without sounding completely insane? Masked children come door to door, knocking on our doors, threatening us, and we give them candy in return. And we gut and carve pumpkins to look like skeleton faces. We scare the crap out of each other in creative ways sometimes, and all in good fun, but definitely looks a little crazy to people who've never encountered this festival, this celebration before. So Halloween is rooted in ancient pre-Christian Celtic festival, in a pre-Christian Celtic festival called Samhain, which looks like it's spelled Samhain, S-A-M-H-A-I-N, but it's pronounced Samhain. And it's in Old Irish, it means summer's end. It was marking really the end of the light half of the year and transitioning into the darker half of the year when the days were growing colder and shorter. And the Celts believed that on this night, October 31st, the barrier between this world and the other world, the spiritual realm, became thinner. It became more permeable. So it was a time when all sorts of spirits, good and bad, and everything on the spectrum could pass through. It was a time when the mortality and the survival of your tribe, of your people, of your kith and kin became very relevant. So Christianity shows up in the 7th century in the British Isles, and as it did in many places, it converted people. And it did this. One major way that it went about doing this work was absorbing many of the pagan rituals, festivals, and celebrations into the church calendar by Christianizing them. So instead of banning these rituals and festivals, you baptize them and make them Christian. It was a long process, but eventually All Saints' Day on November 1st, which is memorializing the dead, became associated with Samhain because they're very close in the calendar. And so it turned into the eve before All Saints' Day, All Hallows' Eve, which became Halloween. Hallow meaning not empty or anything like that, but holy, sacred, saintly, that kind of thing. So for Halloween, I've been thinking of a scripture in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5, verses 1 through 20. And it's it's oftentimes called the Gerasene demoniac. That's sort of the traditional name for this pericope, this unit of tradition in our Gospels. And it's set, you might say, in a very appropriate place for Halloween, which is a graveyard. It's set among tombs. And the man who lives there among the tombs is inhabited by chaos. He's inhabited and consumed by everything that is shady and unfamiliar and unknown. Everything, basically, that we let loose during Halloween time. In Jesus' time, this man was thought to be possessed by unclean spirits, and so he lived in a place that was really the most unclean of places, which is among the dead, in graves. And let's remember, Jesus is familiar with unclean places like this, places of death and disease. He touches and heals lepers, the poor, and destitute, women and children. He eats with prostitutes and tax collectors. He brings back a friend from the grave, still stinking and in his death shroud. Jesus is familiar with unclean places like this. And as this disturbed man comes to Jesus and approaches him, Jesus asks, "What is your name?" And the man answers, "My name is Legion, for we are many." The many faces of chaos and shadow within this man are many. And so it brings up that question. Jesus asks this man, but really all of us, that question, what is your name? And we say it all the time, and it changes everything, because when we name something in our lives, it loses its power over us. Ever felt that moment of finally finding a name for some secret part of yourself that you've been hiding away? Have you ever experienced some hidden fear or some unsaid worry, something that's within you that's festering and eating at your core? And then someone comes along, maybe someone you know, maybe a friend or a loved one, maybe not, maybe a stranger, and helps you to name it, helps you find a name for what that is, and it dissolves, it's dispelled. I really think Jesus would have liked Halloween. I think Jesus would have liked Halloween because it's a night when we not only name our fears and anxieties and that shadow part of human life, but we confront them head on and even act it out, often as a culture. We put on our fears in a way, and we look in the mirror, often taken aback at what we see. We frighten and disorient around Halloween. We turn everything on its head. We enter into places that we've kept covered and hushed up and tucked away, often revealing parts of ourselves that we might otherwise hide. We look at human fear and we give it a name. In a way, on Halloween, when we encounter those things that we're scared of, even unconsciously, we're playing a trick on our fears. Because Halloween allows us, even as Christians, in our Christian walk and journey in spirituality, to step outside of ourselves a little bit, to become something unreal and pretend for a time, to encounter maybe those frets and those fears that we have, those shadowy things within us. Because while those fears and those shadows are real, they are a reality in our experience, they don't have any real power over us. They don't have any real power over us because God is our true source of power and strength. Always with us as that love that casts out that fear and that wisdom that guides us through, not around, but through our fear and our frets and that shadow part of ourselves. So when we ground ourselves in God's love and light, as Jesus did, as Jesus showed us to do, we are reflecting more on that shadowy part ourselves, and we might discover something about ourselves from encountering our shadow. We might even come to see some of our shadow, those fears and frets and worries within us, as a gift that when we see it for what it is can help us be more gracious and understanding, not just with others, but with ourselves as well. And so I invite us to keep these things in mind as we put on our Halloween parties and costumes, and we put up decorations and hand out candy to trick-or-treaters in our neighborhoods. Just as Jesus cast out demons from the man in the graveyard through God's love and power within him, we too are able to dispel those shadows within us. Because just as Jesus, God is with us each step of the way, lighting our path. So those are my thoughts about Halloween and Christian faith and spirituality in general. But I want to know what you think. So let me know what you think about all this in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that we can keep this dialogue, this spiritual conversation going, because I think that's so important in this day and age. So that's it for me. See you next time. Grace and peace to you.